Welcome to the Leaders in Housing Counseling call, our last call for 2015. It's been quite a year, so we'll do a quick summary of some of the most recent financial developments with the budget, and also some of the implications of what was included in the budget and the tax extenders bill. We'll do a quick run through on our meeting with Mike Stegman, the White House meeting, and we'll do some highlights from our conference and hopefully give people some food for thought for 2016. And one last plug for joining NHRC. So we had a few good memberships come in at the end of the year, so we appreciate that a lot. Thanks everybody for that. And I think with that, I think we're ready to get rolling. So Matthew, what's happening with the budget?
Yeah, so hopefully folks saw my email from, I guess, yesterday now. So late Tuesday night, the Congress released their omnibus agreement, budget agreement, and it included, the big news out of it, of course, was that it included $40 million for the NFMC program. So if you've been on one of these calls before, you've heard me talk about it. It's obviously the program that the House had funded at $42 million, and then the Senate had zeroed out. So that's really been our big fight on the federal budget. The HUD Housing Counseling, as you see below, was funded at $47 million by both. So that was the NFMC funding was really the big fight that we had, and very luckily and happily, it was a huge success. It was down just $2 million from what the House had included in their budget, which is, I think about as close to the best case scenario as we could have hoped for. So everyone on the call did a great job. We did several versions of sign-on letters. A lot of people came with us to visit with Republican offices, Republican House members, meet with them in DC and in the districts, and it was really just a huge success. I did joke with someone earlier that this is 2 years in a row that we've had really good news during a budget. Last year, of course, when we got the $2 million bump up for the HUD Housing Counseling number. So, in time, when it's tough times for appropriators and with spending levels down, the fact that we've had back-to-back years of relatively good news. I mean, we lost $10 million for NFMC, but that's what we were expecting, and all in all, this is just a big win for us. So congratulations to everyone for that. I mentioned already the HUD Housing Counseling is still at $47 million. So what's next? So the House, they actually today passed the tax extenders bill, which we'll talk about in a minute, and are going to vote tomorrow morning on the budget agreement, and then the Senate they'll pass both of them to the Senate. The Senate could vote as early as Friday. I mean, they basically want to get out of town for Christmas, so that kind of helps for their Christmas recess, so that helps put some pressure on them to get it done sooner than later. I was just reading about Senator Rubio kind of threatening to try to slow it down over objections to refugees, of course. But so hopefully it could be as early as Friday, but given that they want to get out of town, I think that we can expect it in the next few days. Bruce, is there anything to add?
Well, I mean, I think just a big shout out about everybody participating this year. The Coalition of HUD Intermediaries, HPF has had a guy on the Hill, Andy Butchek, who's very, very sophisticated, and we've had very good coordination. Lots of groups out in the field doing good work. This really is, I mean, a big shout out to the people in Maine for reaching out to Collins. Big shout out to the South Florida people and NCLR for the meeting with Diaz-Ballard. Big shout out to Alan Jennings and the Lehigh Valley people. Charlie Dent went to bat for us in a big way and talked personally to Diaz-Ballard and you know, this all could have gone very badly, or we could end up with a little bit of money, but the idea that we end up with $40 million is pretty good on the NFMC side. So, you know, we'll start all over again in February, but this is a good one for us, I think, in the scheme of things. And thanks to everybody's participation.
So then we wanted to give just a few other kind of congressional updates. The one bit of bad news that I did include in my email yesterday was the HAWK program, which folks will remember there was language put into last year's budget that prevented them from spending any money on the HAWK pilot that they had. Sorry, and I meant to try to use fewer acronyms, but so HAWK is the Homeowners Armed with Knowledge program that HUD had proposed. It would have given a break on the FHA mortgage insurance for folks who had counseling, but in now last year's budget, they at the last minute put in language saying that no money that was appropriated could be used to launch that pilot. We had worked on trying to get that language out. I think it's quite a long shot at this point. There's some theoretical possibility of an amendment, but it seems very unlikely at this point. So I think the most likely thing is that we'll pick this up again for next year, and start working with, like we've done all year, working with Republican members, and just work on persuading them that this is a worthwhile program. It's worthwhile doing as a pilot. That it's actually good for FHA's bottom line. That it encourages responsible home ownership. And that's an argument that we feel comfortable making, so we'll pick that up again as we go forward in the new year. Bruce, do you want to add anything on HAWK?
No, I think you've nailed it. Yeah.
All right. We did mention the tax extenders bill, so the budget and the tax extenders were being negotiated together, which was part of what took so long and why it was such a difficult negotiation. There's many things in there, but the thing that's particularly relevant for folks on the call is the mortgage debt forgiveness piece of it. So that's the piece that this is, in every December it seems like, at least for the last few, they've included this where if you have part of any principal forgiven on a mortgage, that would be counted as taxable income. Since the crisis, they've included provisions to make that not taxable income. So they again passed it. They will have passed it in a few days, the House passed it today, the Senate will pass it this week. That made it retroactive for 2015. So anyone who had mortgage debt forgiven in 2015 will not have to count that as taxable income. And it's also going forward through 2016, which is good news. I mean, in the past, like I said, it would expire, a whole year would go by where it was a question mark, and then they would pass it just going back a year in December. So at least this gives clarity for 2016 that forgiven mortgage debt will not be taxable income for 2016. Bruce, you want to add anything there?
Nope.
All right. The last thing, just to quickly touch on, when we were in D.C. Last week for our annual Leaders in Housing Counseling meeting that we'll get to later in the call, we stopped by the Hill and had meetings with Senators Menendez and Brown with their housing staff folks. Folks probably know, I mean, they're very supportive. So these are the meetings that we love going to, where meeting with Senator Menendez's staff, they're asking what can we do for you? What issues do you guys have that we can work on together? The big things we talked about were, and we talked about the NFMC funding, of course. We talked about the HAWK program. We also were talking to them about the redesign of the common mortgage application. I think I'm getting that name slightly off, but the redesigned mortgage application and getting housing counseling fields and language access fields in those. I think I may be forgetting one issue, Bruce. Am I missing something that we had on our agenda?
Well, we talked to them about HAWK too. That was the other thing, but yeah. So I think, and the reason that so the idea was that they were going to write a letter to FHFA, Fannie and Freddie, arguing that the housing counseling data field should be included and language preference of the home buyer should be included on the mortgage application. And this is partly because we've been getting some pushback from lenders and from Fannie Freddie about including these into the application, and thought that while logic has been a good thing to argue for, maybe political pressure would help as well. I mean, Senator Menendez, both offices were very interested. I'm going to take it back to the senators and decide, maybe make some probing phone calls as well, and so those kind of calls are also helpful. Just letting them know that people are stirring things up is helpful. And the reason we delayed this call until 4 o'clock today was that at 1 o'clock, when we normally have our call, Fannie sort of crazily scheduled an input session on the redesign of the mortgage application. And so the good news is that the housing counseling data fields were in the redesign and are being tested. And also, you may remember, we were also trying to get a consent agreement that home buyers would be able to say if they're having problems with their mortgage, they could get referred to a counseling agency or referred back to the agency you're working with, and they had a little checkbox on that as well. And I know that that's apparently been going through their various focus groups and discussions, both on lenders and consumers, and those two sections survived, so that's good, and I was glad to see it. There was a little bit more tentativeness about this when we last met with them, so seeing that in place was good. Where they are nowhere still is on including language preference, and this was a call with a number of the advocates. So they took, like, a number of people spoke up about how important it is that people be able to choose which language they would like to communicate in. Fannie responded by saying that there were some legal concerns that some of their participants had, some of the lenders, and they were still working through these, but clearly heard that there was strong support for this, so we'll keep pushing. But I think that that probably covers it. Matthew, is there more we should talk about here?
No, I think that's all.
Okay. Well, so we're going to have some guests on who are participants in the meetings. So Ellie Pepper is going to join us for the conversation with Mike Stegman, and then a little bit later we'll have Jennifer join us about the leaders call, and hopefully Simone Griffin, if she's able to stay on the call that long. So just going, Ellie, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Good. Excellent. All right. So there you were in the old executive office building right next to the White House. In fact, I can see you in that picture there. You're the one on the left.
Next to you, Bruce.
That's right. That's right. And the guy in the middle, that's Stegman, Mike Stegman. So what were your impressions or thoughts from the meeting with Senior Housing Policy Advisor to the President?
Well, my first impression was that I felt like he was actually very thoughtful about our meeting. And he was pretty clear with us what he was going to talk about, what he wasn't going to talk about. But he did talk about some important things, and we got to the point where we have a tentative meeting scheduled for February in the tentative agenda.
Yeah. Very interesting things. I mean, we sort of on broad themes. One of them has been to deal with the definitions of housing counseling and kind of the rules of the game, and trying to get all the agencies on the same page here. This was advanced a lot by Fannie Mae agreeing to only consider counseling done by HUD-approved housing counseling agencies, and so no longer using what they called interested parties, and we would call mortgage insurers who have a definite financial interest in the outcome of the deal that might not be the same as the consumers. And so that made that part of it somewhat easier, but there's still no kind of broad administration-wide consensus on this outside of HUD, and so getting those kind of definitions in place would be good. We talked a lot about Fannie and Freddie and the FHFA conversations that have been going on, and ways to build housing counseling into to make it more sustainable in terms of the funding stream. And the other big issue was visibility, increasing the public awareness of counseling and what they could do. So part of the whole conversation, I think, was really about, well, how do we move this forward in the context of this White House task force that we've got in place? And so we're going to go in February. So I thought the one thing that was also interesting is he brought up about using duty to serve as a framework to bring some of these issues in. Did you follow that? And
yeah. So he had alerted us that soon there would be a proposed rule on the duty to serve, and that he encouraged us to spend time and make the effort to really comment often and about housing counseling and the need for it, and that he thought that was a really good place for us to get heard and get some changes made. And so then, ta-da, it came out the next day, or yesterday it came out, right? And so he was right; it was coming out soon. So
yeah, exactly.
There's a webinar next week, so hopefully people can be part of that.
And so, duty to serve, just if people aren't completely on top of this, is the requirements for the GSEs, for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, to meet certain obligations to the marketplace for what would be considered underserved markets. And I'm not going to know them off the top of my head, but they're for low and very low income people. They've had also for they've had some special emphasis on rural and on manufactured homes, so mobile homes, and there have been others as well. So this is an opportunity to kind of raise the access to credit issues we've got, though it's not impossible also to think about other things such as the as rental issues as well in that context. So duty to serve is part of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were created by the federal government. Some of the obligations that come with being created by the federal government, and duty to serve helps define what the goals are that they set going forward. So this is a place where we get to include ourselves. The other interesting thing with Fannie Mae, which didn't come up in the meeting because it just came out, but the new scorecard came out for from FHFA for evaluating Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's performance, and housing counseling again has a prominent role in that. And we'll talk about this in later meetings about what's different from this year and last year, and how it might create some opportunities as well. But in a world where we are really trying to figure out, realizing that our funding sources are going to be on the decline, we understand that NFMC funding is short term and is going to be coming to an end. We need to sort of think about different models, and one of these may be through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as a fee-for-service income sort of situation, and there's some other ideas as well that we may talk about later on in the call. But this was kind of a good start, very healthy, and the funny thing that at the end of it, so we're in the old executive office building, and Ellie asks, well, can we get a photo? And so Mike Stegman.
So he took us right over to the White House. Yeah.
Right. Walked us through the building and all the way out, and right there, got to get the White House in there. So that's that white thing in the back in the corner, and the photograph, that's the White House. Yeah, so it was good. Any other thoughts about, you want to share about Mike Stegman?
No, I just, I will, one thing, this is really a thought. It was just kind of funny that Bruce had put on the agenda for our meeting with Michael Stegman a suggestion for how to raise the visibility of housing counseling to be that the president has somebody, you know, maybe a homeowner and a housing counselor at their State of the Union address. And Michael Stegman, right, almost from the beginning, said, "I just want to let you know that's not going to happen." So it was just interesting that was, he right away said, you know, he was very interested in other opportunities, but he did want to make it clear to us that that wasn't going to happen. It was too soon. It was too close.
Yeah, apparently this stuff plays out months ahead of time, though we did raise this months ahead of time. But anyways, it's the process, and we will need to do some thinking, and actually everybody on this call can contribute to this. We're going to need to, we need to kind of create a plan for what the administration might do for its last year to raise the visibility of housing counseling. And one of the terms of art here is the bully pulpit, the idea that the president and the cabinet members can bring up housing counseling and attract attention to it because it's part of the conversation. And so they've asked us, well, this sounds like a good idea, give us a plan. So we need to think of what that might be. So put on your creative communications, marketing hats, and let's get some ideas going. We're going to need to put some kind of a plan on paper in early January to be ready for this meeting in February. So what they want to do is they want to have some think papers that will get circulated and get people prepared for the meeting in February. Okay, well, let's talk about the leaders meeting, and let's see if we can get Jennifer and if Simone's still available to join us. And so Jennifer and Simone, are you with us? And Ellie, don't go anywhere. So let's
I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Okay, well, we'll start talking, and hopefully we'll, Jennifer.
We should have Jennifer. Simone, it looks like you're self-muted, so I think you just need to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
Good. Okay. Hey, Jennifer.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. We can hear you. Good. And Simone? Well, not quite yet. So let's get going, and Simone, just let us know when you connect. Okay. So we had a marathon day of pretty interesting conversations and meetings, pretty high level. Jennifer, you want to throw out some impressions and of what you thought of the meeting, or if there are highlights you think that will be useful for people around the country to know?
Well, I thought that just having people give ideas for what's important to them was very important throughout the meeting, to hear what different people are working on and to try to come up with ways that we can kind of cohesively move forward as an industry. So, you know, I thought that was an excellent opportunity for us, and you know, to have people come up and be able to speak to us, whether it's Sarah Jarick or Joe Weisbord and Barry Zegas, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the man from the foundation organization.
Aaron Dorfman.
Yeah. Yes. Just to be able to give us thoughts and ideas, and for us to be able to give feedback. I thought it was a very good interactive conference. It's now going to be crucial that we kind of go through the list of ideas that we came up with and prioritize them or categorize them and work together to move forward on the things that we think are going to be helpful to us.
Yeah. I mean, just as an example, so Aaron Dorfman is the head of the Center for the Responsive Philanthropy, and a very strong advocate on trying to get foundations to be more accountable to nonprofits and the communities they serve. And so he gave a pretty, gutsy speech with Janae Richmond from his staff. So interesting couple ideas, as I recall, that came out of this. Others can jump in. One was, we're seeing a retreat from the foundation world in terms of funding housing counseling. So MacArthur Foundation, Ford Foundation have both backed off. Open Society is clearly not going to fund housing directly, though they might do it somewhat indirectly. And he had two kind of big ideas that we should be aware of, one of which is this idea that we go and think about what the foundation priority is, and is there an aspect that applies to housing. So as an example, in the healthcare field, treating how the outcomes that you're concerned about in terms of health can be deeply influenced about whether you're homeless or not, or whether you have a decent and safe place to live. So in the foreclosure crisis on education, education funders were made aware, and I think there was some very good research to show that families that went through foreclosure, that the children's educations were badly disrupted, and school performance declined. Those kind of thinking about our work in the context of what they are funding, to figure out what might fit in that. The other big idea was to really trying to position our work and say, create a white paper. Maybe they do it jointly with his group or on our own, but create a white paper to really catalyze why it's critical at this moment to provide counseling to people, and to address issues like the racial wealth gap.
I think one of the things that I've jotted down while he was speaking was to think about not just what we do, but who we do it for and with. One of the things that came to mind was that housing counseling has always had a significant number of single female heads of household. So, just kind of try this outside the box thinking to help increase funding, and maybe things that we've been overlooking. I thought it was very thought-provoking.
Yeah, exactly. So guys, we had a wonderful hour and a half with Sarah Jarik. What were your thoughts on that?
Am I the only guy left?
Well, I mean, I think Ellie's with us as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I had a lot of thoughts about it, but I just want to say first and foremost that I was so impressed by the fact that she not only gave us a significant amount of time in the morning for us to just ask her questions and have a conversation with her. She stayed there all day, and she had two of her staff people with her all day. It just felt really good that she was very clearly demonstrating her commitment to housing counseling, and it also just it really pointed out the hard work that NHRC has done in building and fostering that relationship. So that was one of the most impressive aspects of her visit for me. It was great that she was so willing to answer our questions, and she was so down to earth and real about it. She comes from a housing counseling background, so she understands and she gets it, and that came through loud and clear.
My takeaway from Sarah's conversation, what I wrote down and underlined, was the HUD priorities that are increased access to credit and opportunity. Again, this big picture thing that people are moving, that not just foundations seem to be moving towards, but government funders also, is access to credit, fair credit, for lack of a better word, equal credit, that we need to keep at the forefront of our fundraising and our conversation. I find it important to talk with their, to talk back to them with what they want to hear sometimes. The other big thing that I took away from it was that she kept emphasizing technology, and also that Brian Siebenlist came back with technology, the bean counting that's being done, and I think this has been a huge struggle, at least for me throughout my career, was that I never seemed to have the client management system or the technology needed to collect the data that of the work that I was doing to really kind of show my work. And the other thing is the changing technology access that clients are going to want. That clients are going to want to, receive text messages rather than phone calls. Clients are going to want to be able to maybe take classes online. So I think we really need to look at technology, and one of the things that Sarah did offer was to convene a conference with us to help us explore technology. Is that correct, Bruce, or was that somebody else that offered to do that?
Well, I mean, she did. I mean, she said that we should try to think about what that might look like in the context of working with HUD. That was an area that the Secretary had a lot of interest in, that she had interest in, and we should think about what that might look like. And I'm particularly interested in a couple parts to this. One is solutions that work for the agencies, and the other one is to kind of bridge the financial challenge that the cost of doing this will be very high for agencies. So thinking about is there a Google solution to all this or something like that that would be helpful. And Doug Dilla in his panel in the afternoon really talked about that too, about how I think 90% of homeowners, home buyers use the internet as part of their search, and that will be a bigger part of the component. One of the things that I thought was very interesting about Sarah's talk was in trying to understand new partnerships and opportunities. One of them was with the rating agencies that rate the mortgage-backed securities and the investors, and trying to figure out how to position housing counseling with them, and how we would be able to make ourselves much more valuable to them in the process. And I think that will help a great deal in terms of access to credit issues and kind of long-term stability. So let's for that.
Bruce, along those lines, Bruce, this is Ellie again. I just want to say one of the other things that stood out to me in Sarah's conversations was her referencing, although she can't tell us when the certification is going to come out, she spoke very clearly that she is hearing from lenders that they are looking for that, and that they are anticipating that certification because they see that as a huge benefit to them. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the other thing I thought, and I think it's very important that we do move ahead with certification. I think we all agreed on that. But the other thing, going back to what you were saying about the ratings agencies and the investors, is positioning ourselves with non-bank lenders and trying to figure out some way that we work with them better, and hopefully receive funding from them, since they're not obligated under the Community Reinvestment Act. We're seeing more and more people going to non-bank lenders, especially for FHA loans, and it would be good to get on top of that.
Absolutely, and that's kind of a stark contrast with Barry Zegas's comments, who said that a major slice of the mortgage market is with these non-bank lenders, where the margins are very thin and where they don't view cross-selling to other products like bank accounts as part of their business model. So that speed and quick delivery are the big issues. How does housing counseling get fit into that? So that was sort of a challenge that kind of came through on Barry's conversation. And the question is, and actually this is one we should think about, with Sarah was, can HUD help engage us with the larger non-bank lenders? And it's a complicated issue because some of you may know Quicken is currently is being sued by the federal government for the loans that they delivered, and they have countersued to, or threatened to countersue, or maybe sued. I'm actually not on top of the details around the claiming that the government had overstepped its bounds on this. So I'm not sure if they're always the best vehicle, but in fact they do have these relationships, and we should just explore what the best way to do this is. It's not just Quicken; there's a whole gamut of these lenders. But 41% of the loans last year were done by non-bank lenders, and so it's a part of our world, and we need to figure out how to make it work more effectively. Yeah, I thought as always, Sarah was very thoughtful and was very appreciative of our work, and I think that's one of the real pleasures. I feel like not that many government agency directors who have the same kind of commitment and depth to all this work. Interestingly enough, she was there at the NeighborWorks session taking a course in FHA counseling. So that was pretty cool too, getting involved with people. Good. Any more quick thoughts on Sarah's conversation before we move on? So one of the areas that we spent some time on was developing a slogan. As we probably know, we crowdsourced slogans on our listserv last month, and we took that list and we distributed to people right before the conference, and then said, well, let's generate your ideas and see what you think and where you want to go. And so Matthew has put up the some of the top ones that actually got the most votes at the end of the meeting. We had Stephanie Peterson as a communications major who came in and just gave kind of a talk about what makes slogans work and what you're trying to communicate. And then we had smaller groups go at it. It was very vibrant conversation, very neat. So here are some of the top ideas. I should tell you that Housing Counseling Leads You Home got 19 votes, and then right behind it at 18, Your Financial Friend from the Beginning to the End. Ooh, that kind of has a rhyme thing going on, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then Housing Counseling, It Works. It got 13 votes. Your Home Starts Here, 10. And Who's on Your Side When You Want to Buy? Oh, that's also got that kind of musicality to it. That has 8, and then everything else drops off pretty quickly. Though, who you're going to call and Opportunity Knocks, those are pretty cool ideas too. So anybody have any thoughts or things to add to that?
Well, I think we got to think what our next steps are going to be with it. That's, ideas we come up with are great, but are they going to mean anything to somebody outside of our industry is a crucial next step.
Right. Ellie, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say it was interesting to kind of make my brain work in that way. I don't typically work in that way, so it was interesting to kind of step back from housing counseling and look at what is it about it that would be attractive in an advertising, so similar to what Jennifer just said, just kind of in a different way, but trying to look at it in a different way.
Yeah, and I think we need to bring some more resource people into the conversation and keep floating on these. Interestingly enough, my 2 favorite ones didn't get any votes whatsoever, didn't even get nominated, so zeroed out. So housing counseling works, and ask a housing counselor, 0. I mean, not even 0. It was not even on the screen. So there you go.
Well, I think your slogan, ask a housing counselor, would go well if there was a question first, like, looking to buy a home? Ask a housing counselor. What's the best mortgage? Ask a housing counselor. Those, yeah. So that's, yeah. But
yeah.
we need a greater communication minds than mine for this.
Right. Well, I mean, the problem is also you can't have them be too long, so that's the other issue. So all that stuff. So we did have lots of opportunities to capture big ideas in the conversation. So just to walk through the panels pretty quickly, Brian Siebenlus kind of brought us up to date on the HUD latest developments. There was a panel that Doug Dilla did where Doug kind of highlighted the challenges faced by the industry, the increasingly changing demographics where younger people are really relying on online resources and assume that speed and access to information are critical, and not necessarily looking to have to go to classes to learn things, and we've got to figure out how to integrate that. We had a terrific presentation and a chart by the Federal Home Loan Banks. So hopefully everybody knows by now, but if not, there is the Open Door program. It has different names around the country, but it's a down payment assistance program that members of the Federal Home Loan Bank can use. Many of those do pay for housing counseling, and it's not unusual for it to be $500. So that was very valuable, and they did do up a matrix to help people find where to go for which locations. And we also had Terry Redmond from the State Housing Finance Agency in Pennsylvania talking about what HFAs do. And Doug, I think, pulled that all together around this idea that, you know, increasingly, if we're going to be successful, we need to look at state collaboratives that can pull together the counseling agencies with the idea that they can kind of have joint negotiating power, so to speak. And the example, most prominent example is the New York, it's now called Home Smart, used to be CXHE, but they've had, and Ellie's been very deeply involved with this, but they've had the ability to negotiate with the State Attorney General, the Governor's Office. Some of these collaboratives can work with state legislatures. There's all kinds of opportunities like this, but agencies working individually don't really have the ability that they might as a collaborative. And so we will do some work in 2016 to encourage more of these collaboratives and learn from what New York is doing. Sarah's very interested in this as well, and it was kind of one of the themes in Doug Dilla's panel that came out really well. It was a very interesting presentation by Gabe Del Rio from Springboard. Pretty rapid fire, but you know, they have contracted with city governments to actually manage the down payment assistance programs. They're CDFI, and they've had some programs there as well. He's launching a mortgage platform, and they will pay counseling agencies for the counseling services on people who get delivered to their program. And he was also interested in talking with agencies about paying them very substantially for doing loan processing, so doing a lot of the front end work on the loan, and having he didn't actually use this term in the meeting. It was as a video, but this concept of hub and spokes, where agencies around the country can feed into a platform, and it's not unlike what we talked with Howard Banker about from the New Jersey Community Capital, and there's some other, sounds like there's other opportunities like that as well. And I think we'll probably get Gabe to do something on the leaders call when they're a little bit further along and ready to roll out. And then Lot Diaz had a very good discussion about the principles behind lender fee-for-service relationships and agreements, and the short of which is that there are ways to structure all this so that you're in compliance with all the relevant laws, but that if we can more consistently negotiate agreements that are, let's set a kind of higher bar in the relationship and pay, let's say, $500 per counseled loan, which is up from the $250 and $300 we typically have been getting, that would help everybody in our field. And I mean, he's going to work on a white paper on some ideas on what the principles might look like that will circulate. NCLR, I think, is pretty committed to this model, and the question is would other agencies and localities want to join in as well, and then help raise the bar on fee for income, lender fee for service income. So that was pretty interesting. And then we had the policy discussion with deep dive with Barry Zegas and Joe Weisbord. Ellie, Jennifer, do you want to give any impressions on that?
Well, I'm just going to say my biggest impression was the conversation about trying to figure out how, as housing counselors, to bring housing counseling into an existing relationship with a borrower, to be more than just a housing counselor, maybe, or to somehow connect with people who are something, involved with folks already, and somehow connect in that way so that people see housing counselors not as, oh, that person I have to go see to be able to get my mortgage, but more of a trusted advisor. So kind of talking about that, that was kind of light bulb for me.
Well, I think you compared it to having a home inspection, and I really wasn't clear on exactly how he envisioned this to be. I mean, if it's a requirement that they have to have housing counseling, or if it's a suggestion that they have to have housing counseling, there still needs to be an incentive for most people that don't start out with housing counselors. And I think, inserting ourselves into the process is often, just seen as slowing things down, or worse yet, that we're going to take them away from one lender and give them to another. And I don't know how to address that.
Yeah, and I think one of the where I'd hoped this conversation would have gone, only went part way there with both of them, is both of them are in place, parts of the discussion about how do you create incentives to get people to counseling, and then how do we structure financial reform, what replaces HAMP, all those pieces, so that they provide a sustainable funding stream for housing counseling and clients get referred in. To be honest, both Barry and Joe are kind of deeply involved in the mechanics of what this all will look like, and are people who, frankly, are the ones who are going to help us get to a point where we are built into the system, we are developing income streams that are built into the way that mortgage loans get originated and serviced. And we kind of dug into that a little bit at the end, and with Barry's ideas on the servicing strip. So I think we've mentioned this on the call before. You know, when you make a mortgage payment to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, 25 basis points of your mortgage every month goes to the servicer in what's called the servicing strip. And as very, very casually says, and it only costs 8 basis points. What happens to the rest of that money? So one idea is that 3 basis points might get peeled out and used to support housing counseling. And one thing I really appreciate about Barry is that he says it goes for pre-purchase as well as post-purchase counseling. So it's not just a catastrophic fund for when people get into trouble, but it also acts preventively. And this could generate, I mean, if it's 3 basis points based on the kind of volumes that we're doing currently, that would generate about $50 million a year for housing counseling. And that would be in the first year, but since it's paid out every month, the second year, there would be a new $50 million coming into the system plus the $50 million that's already there, so $100 million, and the third year would be $150. And so if you're saying the life of a loan on average is 6 or 7 years, you'll get up to $300, even $350 million in regular sustainable housing counseling funding. Well, that would really represent a great deal more than what we would get from HUD or even NFMC. So,
would that incentivize? Would that incentivize both the homeowner? Would the homeowner get something out of this, like a lower rate, less points, lower down payment, and how would it incentivize? This is where I was missing from their conversation. How would it incentivize the lender to do it? Because they want, they want more profit. Is really the whole goal of being a lender. So
that's a different part of the equation. So
okay.
So here's where I imagine the opportunity lies, and why engaging with the investors is so important. At the end of the day, the research is now routinely showing housing counseling works effectively. If we can document when a mortgage is bundled up and sold, that you'll have better performance because you have housing counseling in place. That gets reflected in the pricing. And if we can capture the amount of housing counseling that was done as part of a portfolio, the pricing will reflect that. Now the big question is who gets the incentive from something like that. And I'm in the favor of the incentive going to the consumer rather than to the lender. The lender's going to make money on the deal no matter what, but you have to attract the consumer in, and everything I've learned is that it's, you can talk about how great products are, but people are completely price driven on these things. So to the extent that we can really give them substantial enough savings when they come through counseling. So the idea is to try to monetize the value of the counseling that we deliver.
So if the homeowner can get a lower rate and it results in a better performing portfolio, then the lender can sell the portfolio for a higher price on the secondary market. And in the servicing world, it will cost less to service, so you'll be able to take more profit because the loans won't be delinquent.
Brilliantly said. I like that. Good. Well, so that's one
slogan.
Big idea. All right, there we go. One big idea. Just kind of looking at the list of ideas, so Jennifer was our recorder, and actually has the most legible handwriting of anybody in our community. I think it was very impressive. But one of the things that Sarah talked about was thinking about different service lines that would be that we should develop as specialties that we could raise money around. And one of them was crisis response. So an example she gave were layoffs, disasters,
the casino industry. She gave the casino industry in Atlantic City, disasters, like Hurricane Sandy is, one comes to my mind immediately.
Right.
Things like that. Mm-hmm.
And the other one on the list was relocation. Which,
I think relocation came with people being laid off and moved. Like I know this happened in Maryland, where a lot of people were laid off from other Army bases, and they all got moved to Aberdeen Proving Ground. I know that was so I had talked to someone in Maryland that had worked on a program like that, so helping people relocate. Which I think was a fantastic idea, if that's happening around you.
Right. I mean, I think another thing I thought was just great about the meeting was the level and depth of the people in the room. The housing counseling community. I mean, we had David Young from Illinois giving a great kind of quick analysis of what their relationships are with their state housing finance agencies and some of the innovative things they're doing. I mean, there was a lot of that, of people really speaking up, and Laura Buxbaum with her own kind of deep knowledge about our work and thoughts about where to go. I mean, it was really a great group of people in terms of thinking about where we need to be going in the future. So that was very, very helpful, I thought. So any quick closing thoughts?
That was one of the other ideas. That was one of the other ideas, was to have a leaders call where we could share these kind of best practices or innovative things. Right. Because what you'll find is something like, you see that New Jersey Community Capital and Springboard are doing something kind of similar, and they were kind of evolving on their own in their own space, and now they're going to talk to each other. And so, that's important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we kind of got the interactive part to this meeting a little bit better than in previous meetings. Thanks and some from the guidance of some of our board members, including Jennifer and Judy Hunter. Good. Okay. Well, I thought great time. Actually, it was a very nice hotel, a restaurant we went to afterwards too. There was a lot of fun, and that was a pretty packed house. That was neat. I'll have to try to do that again.
The after party is always fun. Well,
I know, it's great. Well, a lot of good people. So we, Matthew and I have a whole list of takeaways about what we'll do differently next time. But I think it was I think this one felt like a great meeting as they go. So thanks for everybody's help here.
Thank you, Bruce and Matthew, for all your work on that. It was a great meeting, and I concur. It was great, and the dinner afterwards was wonderful, and overall a very nice 2 days in DC. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Yes, thank you for putting it together. It was a lot of work.
Well, and we do need to think about, so there's a question about whether we should do more than one a year, and whether we have the resources and if there's interest in doing that. So that's something that I'd love to hear what people's thoughts are. And certainly anybody who participated in the meeting, if you've got any feedback of things we could do better, we're very interested in those elements. That's very, very helpful to us going in the future. I want to make sure we do a quick membership plug and make sure that people know when you're a member now, you have access to all the Center for Responsive Philanthropy resources. So that includes free access to the foundation directory, which is the manual for identifying funding sources. They do a conference every year with foundations that I hope at least a few of us might be able to get our head into and be part of the VIP reception, whatever that means. But get the housing counseling word out there. And so Erin announced that there's a new membership benefit that comes on, which is directors and officers insurance, which can be very expensive. And they have a new policy that they've arranged through their relationships with other foundations, and it's
hopefully we'll be able to save organizations some serious money. So that's on top of all the other benefits that we have on the list, and they bring in some kind of other HR and consulting kinds of packages that might be of interest to some participants as well. But, you know, I mean, what was interesting about the conference in one way was that 2/3 of the people who came to the meeting this year were members. So this was really dominated by membership organizations. Usually it's about half and half the previous years. And that was a nice thing. It was nice to meet some people I hadn't met before, and certainly lots and lots of good old faces. So 2016, if your organization hasn't joined yet, please join. We really thrive on our membership because it's the flexibility we've got. It represents between 1/5 and 1/4 of our budget, so it's a big slice of our business, and we really appreciate all the members. So anyways, have a good 2016, and you know, please take your well-earned holidays, and Happy New Year to you. And we're looking forward to working with you in 2016.
I feel like I have to write something.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.